Right, exactly. So slowly turning off the tap, as it's been described, on how much people see. I think one of the interesting things is people will say, look, it's a free market. Facebook, if it wants, even if it did something like turning off the tap altogether and it said, we just won't show news anymore, what Facebook's done over a long period of time as a company is hoover up a lot of people that go to it straight away, and it's ended up being a lot of people's default for looking at news. If you turn off official news then, suddenly people aren't getting trusted news, and who knows what's getting out there. So do you think it's fair to say there's a responsibility on the company, Meta, as well?
I think there is a responsibility on the company. I mean, let's just understand what they're doing here. They've invented a clever business model which takes the content of other people, and in this case, we're talking about news, media, and gets people looking at their website or their app, gets their attention, and then they sell advertising against it. What's going on here is they don't actually want to pay the people who create the content anything for that content. They want to keep all the profits for themselves. Now, as you say, that you can have different views about that, but here we're talking about journalism, we're talking about media content, and if people are after news, but they're not able to get trusted news from media outlets, they might get news from different sources that aren't credible. There's no agreed facts, a bit of misinformation, disinformation. So I think Facebook does have a responsibility, or Meta, to make sure that what's happening on their platform is not undermining our society and our democracy through replacing trusted news with untrusted news. And if they're not going to do it, then I think the government needs to look at all options to see what it can do.
And in terms of what it can do, though, correct me if I'm wrong here, as you say, it goes through various steps. It designates Facebook, it forces it to arbitration, and the ultimate step would be, well, you've said your claim, here's how much you need to pay for news. But Facebook can still just pull the plug. It can do what it's done in Canada and say, all right, we'll block all news in our sites. How viable for that is a company? Is it just a case of trying it on and seeing what the will of governments is? Or do you think they might really go down this path worldwide?
As you've said, they've done it in Canada. So the only two countries that are really requiring effectively payment for content are Australia and Canada, who copied the Australian model, not completely, but largely. We were the inspiration for their model. To avoid, so in Canada, they were automatically designated. And so their response has been to take all news off their platform. So you just can't see news on your feed. You can't see a news item and try and post it to a friend. So yes, there's no news at all. Now, what effect that's having on the attractiveness of their websites, probably too early, or their app is too early to tell. But I think if they do that, that really is damaging to the country within which they reside. And they need to think carefully about that. I mean, you can't, I know this is a very bad analogy, but you can't go into a country and set up a production plant that causes excessive pollution. And I think there's an issue here where you set up a free service, you attract people to it. You're not providing news, let's be clear, right? Meta and Facebook, they're not replacing news, they're just ignoring news, right? So
yeah,
we have to weigh up the effect that has on our society and our democracy and see whether we're comfortable with coming into our market and running a business system that doesn't allow trusted news on it. And I think there is a case for a government response to that.
Yeah, and I mean, the other analogy is sort of a version of what Uber's done in countries, comes in, great, everything's cheap for a while, then the competitor disappears in taxis or shrinks, and then guess what? The prices go up. Rod, got to leave it there. Appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you very much.